No, you don't want to interact. No. This is the most funny part of the kind of process. Okay, 20 minutes. Well, first of all, I need to move. So I don't know if I will be able to move. Okay. I'd like to apologize a little bit for those of you that knows a little bit about Odour, because the aim here was to do an introduction on Odour. That's why Laura and Andrea have kept a very low level, so that people that is not familiar with these kind of things.
It's not low level, it's high level, it's just basics.
Basic level. And this is what I'm going to do too. I'm going to have a basic level. So now, I've done this presentation about Odour regulation and Odour impact many times, and usually I start with one country and then the other one and then the other one and then the other one, and this is this limit and this limit and this is the frequency, and so I wanted to adapt to the kind of structure that Laura and Andrea did, and I've done a bit different way that I usually do. So, but first I wanted to introduce you to our association, International Environmental Association of Odour Managers. This is a picture of 3 years ago. Officially founded in 2007, but we have been meeting, we have had meetings since 2015. This is the thing. I happen to be the president, but it was by force. I didn't ask to be the president. We have these countries so far: Spain, Colombia, Argentina, and Chile, because it's a Spanish-based association, but we are open to non-Spanish countries as well. And so far we have 44 members and 14 companies. These are some of the companies that are members of this association. So if you want to know a little bit more about this association, please contact me, and I can give you more information. There is a website and you can check it. Okay, so how to estimate the Odour impact? We have seen this already explained by Laura and Andrea. So the first method is dynamic olfactometry coupled with dispersion modeling. This is the thing. You take a sample, you analyze it, and then you calculate the impact within other dispersion modeling. This method is the most used. It's repeatable, reproducible, but it has two things. It has a few more things, but because I wanted to keep it simple. Two things, important things for me. One of them is the difficult estimation of Odour for large passive surface, and the other one is the difficult estimation of fugitives emissions. So now, why am I speaking about Odour legislation in the world? Why Laura told me, listen, why don't you speak about the Odour legislation in the world? So this is a paper that we are writing. We have been writing this paper for 2 years, I think, already. And if you see, there are authors here from all over the world, in Canada, Spain, USA too, New Zealand, Austria, France, UK, Italy, Chile, Spain, Belgium, Flanders and Wallonia, Colombia, China, Germany, the Netherlands and Japan. So if you can see, we have had a lot of discussions, and still we couldn't reach any agreement, but the thing that we are doing this paper has made that I have to present this many times.
You're so, even leader of a task group about that in the project, so...
okay, we'll speak about this. So this kind of methodology is being used a lot, but I wanted to present just three things. 4 minutes. These are different countries, and they have different levels, and you can reach this level at different times of the year. In this case, 175 hours a year. We could speak about percentiles because this is a basic level course. I'm gonna speak about the number of times that you can exceed one certain concentration. So instead of speaking of percentiles, I'm gonna speak about the number of hours. Sometimes it's more graphic. And in Canada, it's around the same, but instead of taking hours, they take packages of 10 minutes. So it's 264 packages of 10 minutes that you cannot go more than one other unit per cubic meter. This is every year, so 10 minutes every year. So those are examples of typical dynamic olfactometry. Field inspections, grid method has been explained already. This is the grid method. People is going from one place to the other one. The study lasts 6 months to 1 year. They go to one of each of these points, and they go to the point 10 minutes, and then well, it has been already explained, so I will not go there. This has Andrea also spoke about this, but because there are not many legislations about this. The same. Using the field inspection, there is legislation, but so far I just know the German one, and in this case you cannot go over 1 odor hour more than 10%, more than 876 hours every year. You cannot go more than 1 odor hour if you are in residential and mixed areas. And you cannot go more than 1,314 hours a year if you are in commercial and industrial areas. For plume method, already explained by Andrea, so I will not go there. You go to the source, the stack, and you move. I actually like more the dynamic method, so this is the one that I usually explain. And there are some arguments about why I like it. Some other people would like another one. And anyway, this is the source, smoke there, and you go in the sack. Not this way, but
like that.
Yeah,
you seem drunk.
not this way. And you measure a unit which is not the sniffing. It's not the other unit. It's the sniffing unit. Got blocked. So nice. Moment. It's blocked.
It's blocked. If you have any questions about it's a good moment for questions.
Yes. They are asking to explain the other hour, which in fact it was not explained.
The other hour.
It was
So
explained by
how
Andrea.
to calculate the 1 other hour in squares? How do you go in the grid?
It's when odor is perceived for more than 6 minutes in the hour. I don't remember.
Yes.
It's like this. You go to a point, right? And you stay there. And you stay there for 10 minutes. With the new European standard, it's like this before. It changed a little bit. And now you smell, right? And then you detect it smells or it does not smell. Then after 10 seconds, you breathe again. Smells or not? After 10 seconds, you breathe again. Smells? No. And every time you detect and smell, you check, yes, right? So after 10 minutes, if 10% of those measurements are positive, this counts like a positive register, like a one other hour. It counts like a 1 other hour. Now, you do this.
That counts like more than 10%.
One this 10 minutes measurement counts like a 1 other hour. And now you have to go, if you go 6 months, 52 times to that very same point, and then you have a square, remember?
Yeah, the grid.
So you go 52 times along 6 months, and then 52 times to the other point, 52 times to the other point, and 52 times to the other point. And you calculate between the all other hours, if 10%, if you it's 52 times, right? Or
It's 52 times in total.
it's total. Yeah, it's 13 times. 13 times. 13 times.
And if it's more than 10% of the times, then it's another. It's
Another question about the grid, because you have the image of the meteorological conditions. Do you represent the grid similarly? So if you see that the wind is blowing like that, then you do the grid like that from the source?
No.
no, not necessarily. Not necessarily. It depends on where your receptors are. So this is one first concept.
So how do you design the grid?
You try to include all the objectives, all the sensitive receptors, so that you have a mapping in all the area of interest.
So it may be that some areas, because of meteorological conditions of your grid, would never be affected by odor.
It can be. It is expected to be. Of course, you expect the areas that are more frequently downwind
But still you
to be affected more frequently.
But still you sample those areas which are not.
Yes, of course you can choose to have a wider grid where you don't expect to have others and to have a
26 times. To each point for a 1 year study. If you these 104 measurements that you do along the year, you do more than 10%, you get 1 odor hour. Okay. Field inspections. So is there in the field inspection they measure the sniffing unit. The sniffing unit is regulated in the legislation in Belgium. For example, I took the example of livestock farms. There is a sniffing unit level of 3 sniffing units. There are target and limit values for this kind of measurements. For example, for slaughterhouses, there's a limit value of 1.5 sniffing units per cubic meter as 98 percentile.
Just these type of limits that are evaluated with the theoretical model, in practice, how is it possible to measure?
That's another conference of 1 hour more or less.
Next time when we met.
Instrumental odor monitoring system. That's the oldest D-NOSES. This is a new European standard. I took this is I think if you want to buy D-NOSES, I would go here to olores.org. It's the website that I'm main editor of, and but there are a few more. I just got no space for more D-NOSES, so because I remember in the USA 3 months ago somebody told me, oh, there is just Olotech or whatever. And I said, no, there are a lot of D-NOSES or IOMS as we call it now. So for IOMS, there is a legislation as well. There's a legislation that considers if you have an instrumental odor monitoring system and the so-called D-NOSES or not. For example, for animal byproduct processing plants, there are emission limit values of 5 odor unit per cubic meters. Those limits are not set at the receptor. You have to get this limit 3 kilometers around the fence. So it's different, a bit different as usual. And depending on new plants or existing plants, this limit can be exceeded 44 hours a year for new plants. And if you have an existing plant, you can still go for 175 hours a year. And you would tell me, where are the D-NOSES here? Where are the IOMS, the instrumental odor monitoring systems? Okay, so these plants, they have to regularly check their emissions. And if, for example, all the odor emitted is over 100,000 other units per cubic meters, they have to, every 4 months, take a olfactometric sample to check if this limit is still being you get this limit. But if you have an IOMS, Instrumental Odor Monitoring System, so-called D-NOSES, you can have a longer period, and instead of checking every 4 months, which has a high cost, you can do it annually. Or if your odor concentration is between 100,000 other units and 5,000 other units, you have to check twice a year your emissions. But if you have an IOMS, you can do it every 2 years. So sometimes, because the olfactometric analysis can be expensive, this is a way to sort it out. And this is the only legislation that I know. If somebody of you know any other legislation, please let me know. That has anything to do with IOMS.
Carlos, it is limited to animal byproduct plants?
Mm-hmm.
Just that.
Okay, field olfactometry, it has been explained, has it?
No?
Ah, okay, so field olfactometry, there are 2 field olfactometers. It has advantages and disadvantages. Disadvantages for me is that okay, this X went to that F. What is the disadvantage? It's a way to measure odors on field, in the field. This can be useful. For example, there was some presentation during the conference that they were using one of these devices. I don't know if you know how these ones work. This is a carbon filter, active carbon filter. The air goes through here, the clean air, and then here there are like holes, big holes and small holes that makes the dilution, so that you bring this to the field, and you mix clean air with not that clean air, and then you get a dilution to threshold measurement, not an other unit per cubic meter measurement. Okay, and this is the same, but you have a bottle. There have been a few studies between this model and this model, but I will not go into those. I just wanted to tell you that first of all, it's not part of the standard. I wish one day it is part of the standard, because I think it would be a good thing. So far, it's not. There is no need of a laboratory, so odors are measured on site. Sometimes it's not necessarily low cost, because sometimes you have to go a few times to the place, and if the place is far away, you have to spend a lot of money there. So not always is the cheapest option to measure odors. It's very difficult to measure frequency, because you have to go many times to the site. And calibration of panelists with sniffing sticks might not be sufficient. And here you have a reference of a study comparing panelists calibrated with butanol and with sniffing sticks. Anyway. Is there any legislation that relates with the field olfactometry? There is. Most of them are in USA. For example, I put the state of Colorado as an example. You have dilution to threshold. This is dilution to threshold. It's not all units. For example, for industrial use area in the state of Colorado, you can go over 15 dilution to threshold. And there you have other limits for other activities. Now, odor mapping. Odor mapping is what we are going to do at the D-NOSES citizen science. Maybe I start slowly. I have always called it the odor mapping, but because I now know Rosa, I'm changing a little bit my language. Now I'm calling it citizen science, but it's exactly the same. It's using the people as a tool to measure which is the odor impact. It's a very interesting tool. A tool needs citizen participation. It's very easy to validate, and it's very easy to detect false positive. It's very easy to detect false positives. It's very easy to detect people that is not saying the truth. Very easy. So it's not subjective, it's objective. And it's the only technique that I have mention here, and I have 10 seconds to finish, that link odor with annoyance. We haven't spoken about annoyance before until now. It's the only technique that links odor with annoyance, as Rosa mentioned this morning. Okay, and this is our project. I hope the
first time you say something is very easy.
yeah. That's my opinion anyway. Is there any legislation that deals with odor mapping? Is there anything that any regulation in the world that have anything to do with odor mapping? There is something more or less. For example, the city of Des Moines in the USA, the city declares an odor alert when 10 complaints in 24 hours period are received. It's not odor mapping, but it's very related. And for example, if the government receives 3 notices of violations in a 90-day period, the activity has to make an odor management plan. So yeah, there is a legislation related with odor mapping, and I wish one day this odor mapping goes also to a standard. And I put this last thing, the surveys. They are also used a lot for other managers, and they are useful. There are 2 types, repeated with a certain periodicity or made just one time, once you send the survey to your group of interest and you ask them. Useful when you want to identify nuisance, but it doesn't say when and where, because you send the survey or the questionnaire at the one day, and you might have others or you might not have others. The person that received this questionnaire do not know if a week ago there was another. He has a feeling of his normal day-to-day. Good for a general evaluation and very useful for those effects studies. 2 things fast. Good news in Europe, because we have the first odor emission limit for 28 European countries for the very first time. So our working group 2 will have a new status because there is a legislation, European legislation. And if you realize in the whole talk, I haven't mentioned odorants. I didn't say anything about hydrogen sulfide, I didn't say anything about ammonia, I didn't say anything about VOCs, because I was talking about odors, not about odorants. So thank you very much. If you need anything.
Bravissimo, Carlos. Thank you very much. We have a short coffee break. I would shorten it to 10 minutes.